Good morning and welcome to Your Daily Game Face. I am Dr. Kim Lannon and I'm here with Lou the Pooh.
Too loud?
Yeah. Oh my God. I
Is
am.
it really?
Yeah. Did you see me?
Yes.
I was like, whoa, my monitor is screaming this morning in my ears. I love how you had that face like, ooh, too loud.
Yeah, I could tell.
It was, oh, good morning, Kevin.
Good morning.
Want to be part of my show? Just start.
I'm the greeter.
Well, there's a start to my show. Good morning to everybody.
Well, Kevin's got to work.
So good
Got to
morning.
keep all these airplanes in the air in
Exactly.
this group.
I know, right? So, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing very well
Are
so
you?
far.
Really?
Yeah.
So far.
That's all I know.
It's whatever gets you through the day, right?
Exactly.
So
Be where my feet are. I hate that saying,
be where my feet are.
but it's my thing now.
Okay. Well, I don't. Okay. Why?
Being present.
I thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
As
you
if.
look confused.
I just be where my feet are. I know we talked about that last week, but
Yeah.
Then let that one go and use something different.
I will, but it's just stuck in my head now
Oh God. Well, that's a you issue, not a me issue.
because a local professional athlete says it. He's an idiot. So
So you're hanging on to it. I know.
I know
you
it's just stuck in my head now.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah.
So how was your weekend?
My weekend. I worked
Oh, you always work.
Yeah.
How do you have time for anything else?
for emergencies. There's nothing but emergencies. That's all I have time for.
You know, ever since that was brought to light to me, I literally can't count the number of like extra on top of like my normal daily life thing, because I now make a point of paying attention to it.
You're
I'm
conscious of it, yeah.
Well, because it's like when you buy a car and then all of a sudden you see all the same cars and it's like, oh, all of a sudden everyone's buying the same. No, you just selective out like how much. I'm like, wow, you don't think about it. And I'm like, wait a second. This morning alone,
Yep.
just this morning alone, on top of my workday, I got 3 extra add-ins of got to do this extra call, got to do this extra thing, got to write this extra thing. Because why? Because it's necessary and it's part of the job. And it wasn't scheduled in my day, but I will make room for it. You know why? Because that's what you do.
You should keep a log.
I sort of started keeping like a little note thing on top of on each day, like of all the extra things that I do that are not scheduled in that I have time for. Because you know what? I make the time for them. Because that's what people do.
The car thing is such a great example.
Yes. It's the
My
selective
ex-wife bought a
attention.
car that I didn't know existed, and then all of a sudden I saw it everywhere.
It's the selective attention.
Yeah.
That's what we do. All of a sudden we're like, oh, it's like, the Volkswagen thing, like notice a Volkswagen and all of a sudden you're like the punch buggy thing, that was, remember back in the day where you like find a punch buggy and go punch buggy when you're driving. You don't know that. Okay.
No, I know punch buggy. Sure.
Right. So it's the same. It's a psychological phenomenon that's very basic about selective attending.
Yep.
So we selectively attend out and in what we are used to. And so all of a sudden you buy a new blah, 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 and then you see them everywhere, but they're always there,
Yep.
So, or whatever it is.
Thoughts become things.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know it. So, so it's nice today.
Is it? I'm sorry. Been in here for a while.
Oh, well, you didn't get up this morning and come in.
I did.
Okay. So.
I drove on 495. So.
Oh, well, I know.
Yeah.
Well, I almost got clipped by someone trying to get across the 3 lanes of the highway without signaling.
It's supposed to get hot though, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, no.
I know. We had 3 days of 101 degrees. That was lovely last week.
Yep.
Mm.
I wasn't here.
I saw you.
No, for a few days I was down in North Carolina.
How come I didn't know that? Oh my God.
Because I did your show. I scheduled it around your show.
Oh my God, you're so nice. As you should. Thank you so much. It's making up for all the times that you screwed up the show.
All right. We're going there.
There's one.
Yep.
So anyway, so here we are. What is today? The 6th of August?
Yes.
Let's talk about narcissism.
Why not?
So I thought today would be a perfect day because remember last week I said we're coming into August. It's still the year of you, which it always should be. It should still be the month of you.
Yep.
And people have been asking throughout this time I've talked about it. They're talking about in different ways, like, well, how do you have the year of you or how do you have the day of you or whatever without feeling selfish?
Yeah.
Which then gets you into this conversation of, well, what is being selfish versus what is selfish? Do you know what I mean? Like when I accentuate it, right? And then it gets into, well, are you being full of yourself? And are you being narcissistic? And what is narcissism? And all that, like, so it runs this very weird drop into the cycle of doom. So I was like, well, you know what? And then I have families. We're getting ready. I mean, even though I think it's all year, I'll split it out and chunk it into the different parts of the year. Like we have the holiday time and we have like dealing with narcissism, and, it's such an overused word to collectively mean so many things. And so, and you can over label people with it, but here's the first thing.
Because everyone's got a degree
I was just
of
going
it,
to say,
right?
you just took that away from me. God, you just.
Sorry.
So everybody has narcissism, and people cringe when you say that. Not all people, but many people who don't understand psychology and the background of psychology and like mental health stuff. We are all raised with injuries to our seat of our soul, or our ego, or our consciousness, right? So whatever you want to call it, we all grow up in the first 6 years, especially, that's when it happens, being dinged, like chipped away at. And, little looks, little comments, little things and it's because we interpret them that way based on how they're given. Sometimes they're literal and very mean given and mean spirited in terms of words, actions, abuse. I mean, it's a continuum, but anyway, it can happen once. Usually it happens more than once, but it can happen once and make a ding on the seat of your soul. Or it can happen multiple times, become chronic, and then become traumatic, or it can be one-time traumatic. Like, so there's lots of different ways to create this sense of narcissism. And what narcissism really is, if you look at the underside of it, it's shame that gets created out of being dinged. So when you're like dinged over and over again, you become more shamed. If you're made to feel like you're less than once, twice, 20, 30, 100 million times, right? You will have a higher, greater sense of narcissism. Now, that's a continuum again. The greater amount of narcissism you hold without resiliency, without someone there to buffer, or I call them your yummy person, your person that gives you like balance to say, don't listen to that crazy stuff, or don't let that bother you. Helps deflect it. Doesn't mean it doesn't land, but then the fracture in the seat of the soul or the ego isn't quite as deep, but it's still there. It's mitigated. And then you also have people that tend to be more trait-wise, as people, temperament-wise, more resilient. So that when people ask me these questions, I can never give just well, it's this. It's these factors that go into making up. How are you going to handle something? How is it going to give you an ability to handle a fracture or two in your soul? And by soul, you can take that however you want. It's just a place in your being of how you end up. Essentially, if I really get technical, it's in your limbic system in your brain. It's where your emotional center is that gets hit hard neurologically. I mean, quite frankly, when these things happen, and it remembers it in the hippocampus, and it makes feelings and emotions that come through the hypothalamus and the amygdala, to be quite frank. And then the whole limbic system takes over, and then it sends signals to the whole body that gives you a response. How's that for technicality? So it's easier for me to say it's the seat of your soul. It's like, right? It's the heart of your emotions. So when narcissism is present, it could be just a little bit minor, or it can be huge. But at the end of the day, it's about, there's an underlying sense of shame in the person, a feeling of embarrassment, a feeling of less than, a feeling of self-worth that's less, or low self-esteem, which is why you often hear people say, oh, my 5-year-old is really having a hard time with their self-esteem. Well, what happened? So there's, and people think, oh, the kids don't have that. Well, it's built from 0 to 6. Right. It really is. Yeah. Everything is laid from 0 to 6 for these things. And then
that's not necessarily a parenting thing. No, right? That's the nature of growing up.
It's the nature of growing up. It can be, it's, quite often it's parents, but it's school, extended family, social groups that kids get involved with once they're like 3, 4, 5, right? It's television, social media that they're watching, especially now, but this has been like going on forever. This is not a new phenomenon, even pre social media and all the things, right? So it's not social media's fault for this.
Yeah.
But it can come from anywhere in the environment in terms of interactions or people and people to people interactions,
But
right?
it's unavoidable. It's part of the
Right.
process.
Right. So no one gets out unscathed without a little bit of narcissism. And just like no one gets unscathed without a little bit of histrionics. We all have a little drama to us. It might not, some people are really dramatic and some people are, some people, we all have a little bit of things. That's why the danger of going into psychology in your first year is when you read the diagnostical and statistical manual, you'll end up going, oh my God, I'm all those things. Because you can identify with every single thing. You're like, oh my God, I'm a schizophrenic. Oh my God, I'm bipolar. Oh my God, which is what people do. They'll come in and they'll be like, I think I'm blah, 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 blah. I'm like, how do you know that? Well, I Dr. Googled it and the DSM-4 said, or the DSM-5 said, I'm like, oh my God.
It's either that or cancer.
Or I'm dead, right?
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
dying, right? Exactly. So, so I think that one, be mindful that it can be over labeling. However, because there's so many of us that do have it, obviously, there's a level of what I've seen a trend of in the past 20 years of my 30-year practice is I've seen it get increasingly more intense in people. And there's an underlying sense of entitlement that comes with people. And I think that's generated out of much more of the social media age, right? But there's that entitlement. There's factors that go into like a narcissist being in the world. When you don't raise children with authoritative parenting, which is high in warmth and high in expectation. And so in other words, like you don't expect your kids to ever have to clean their bathroom, make their beds, do dishes, take out garbage, feed the pets. Like if you never require something of your kids growing up,
right,
when they are adults, who do you think they're going to be? If you always are the person that they go to, give them, they call you when they need something, but it may look like it's like, hey, I love you, Dad, or hey, I love you, Mom.
Yep.
By the way, do you have an extra $500? Is it really because they're calling because they love you, or is it because you need something?
Yep.
Right. So, and parents fall into a trap sometimes, not realizing that they have set their kids up for that, because what they've done is they've done the unhealthy parenting style in an effort to maybe overcompensate for their own childhood or overcompensate for other things. But they do that permissive, indulgent thing, which is, permissive and indulgent, both of them are, they have you can have high in warmth or no warmth.
Right.
And then you can have, no expectations, or you can have no expectations.
No expectations.
Right. So both have the no expectations, right?
Yep.
When you don't have expectations, then you set a kid up for a huge narcissistic hit in the seat of the soul. The seat of the soul will get nailed every time emotionally, because what is the world like? The world is not your family life where you're permissed and indulged, right?
The world is going to flood them with expectations.
The world is going to, right. And when they don't get what they want, what they do is they come back on you. And when you're raised I'm going to loop this back around. When you're raised in a narcissistic environment, in one or both parents, usually it's one, there's usually not two, but it does happen. I know. Do you like my smile?
Wow. Okay.
Do you like my smile?
Yeah. Slid that right in there.
I did.
Yeah.
Oh, did you hear that cynical,
I did.
maniacal little laugh I just had? There's usually at least one, right? So when you're raised in a narcissistic environment, it's super unhealthy, obviously, right? Because the narcissist in the environment usually doesn't know that they're a narcissist. And there's so much unconscious, habituated parenting that creates a dynamic in a house. And it's like addiction. Everybody in the house becomes part of that addiction. Everybody in the house becomes part of the narcissist storyline and narrative. If you've got 2 or 3 children in the house, you got one child in the house, and you've got another parent who's not that way, everybody ends up playing a role that feeds that soul of the narcissist.
Right.
So if you have a narcissist parent who's creating an environment of non-expectation, you don't have to do dishes. We give you everything you want. You don't have to make your bed. You don't have to do anything. We just give you money to go to the mall. We pay for everything. Oh, by the way, you're 25. We're still doing your phone bill. We're still paying for your, health insurance in the state of Massachusetts is still that. But, we're paying for everything and you're living for free or, whatever it is, right? Every time you have, you blow your nose, we give you $100, right? And that's all set up. And then, if you don't have the other parent's not a narcissist and they're sucked in too, that other parent becomes part of the system of they're the enabler.
Yeah.
Because they are going to, because they're, even if they're married, they're going to stay enabling because the narcissist is so abusive in the tactical style of their way of being in that. And then if you get divorced, they still remain in that dynamic unless you have really firm boundaries, unless you have absolute understanding of how this works. And if you have kids in that become adults, they just still repeat what they've been doing all their lives. And they go out in the world and they do it around the world. And if you do anything to shake that boat or rock that boat to make it not work the way it's always since they were little, it will still become an end result that's not good for people that are not narcissistic, people that are, or they're less, I shouldn't say not, they're less narcissistic. So people who are less damaged will be greatly impacted by those that are damaged, right? Because hurt people like hurt people. How do they get you to be hurt? They'll hurt you to make sure you hurt in with them. So they'll cull you in. It's a terrible cycle, right?
Yep.
And if you're in a marriage and you're in a family that does this for 20, 25 years, you got a pretty deeply rooted habit, right?
Yep. Well, narcissists need to control their environment.
Right.
And they tend to attract and farm people who will go along with them.
And they attract people that are people pleasers.
Yeah.
So because that's the easiest one to cull, right? So,
Yep.
and I like the way you said it's like it's farming them. It's culling them, farming them, grooming them,
Yep.
and
selecting them.
And selecting them. And a lot of times people that are in that situation won't realize that they have been farmed and culled and groomed in. They just don't see it because their role is so definitive of where they fit in and that it just is like, well, that's my role. Like, what do you mean? And when you point out like, well, this is what's going on, oftentimes I'll get feedback of, no, that's not me. So this is not, you've heard me talk about this before, and so this is where I was going to go today. And it's not a formal psychological term, but I use it all the time when I teach about it because it's a good visual. But the narcissistic tether, I always do the visual, and you've heard me talk about how people get tethered in, right? But what it does is when I talk about a tether, so if you guys don't know what a tether is, it's obviously like a rope or a string that keeps you held on to, like, like if you're on the dock and you're holding the boat, it's holding you to the boat, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a manipulation. So I hate that word, but for all intents and purposes, it's a manipulative tactic used by the narcissist to keep another person connected to them that's toxic, emotionally abusive. It's to hold the relationship where they want it. It's a form of control. And if it's not overt, a lot of times people really miss it. And so many people that are really deeply narcissistic, they're really good at being covert about it. And it's so subtle that it builds so quickly and it metastasizes so fast throughout like a family that the tethers are deeply rooted, and then it trains other people in the house to be narcissistic. Sometimes people get out unscathed, but sometimes they don't. Some people get less unscathed or less scathed. But the
kids watch one part of the couple be tethered and they learn the technique.
Right. And so some kids, if there's one, you got a 50-50 chance. If there's 2 or 3, you've got a better chance of at least one getting less of that, right? Because they're going to see it. But what this tethering does, tethering bonds or ties you to that person, and it makes it difficult for the tethered one, to leave or to speak up or to have anything different to say or have an alternative opinion, or because their fear is, what gets very trained in is that there will be a response, or not response really, it'll be a reaction to you that's so harsh that it reinforces the tether. It's easier to be tethered in and comply than to go against it, because it's like, going to the extreme. When you cut the tether and go no contact, it becomes incredibly painful, not for the narcissist. It becomes painful for the one that was tethered. Right? The narcissist doesn't have those feelings. The narcissist just moves on to the next feeder. If you know what I mean?
Yeah, and they generally have a string of supply.
And they usually have a string of supply. So so how the tether works, right? I'm going to try to walk it through. So we're familiar with the term love. I'm using lots of colloquial terms because easier for people to understand. So love bombing,
right?
Love bombing, right? And kind of the idealization of things. So initially, a narcissist may shower you, like the kids, your spouse, your friends may shower you, like even in a new relationship. This is what happens with people that get into new like dating relationships, right? They shower you with like excessive attention and affection and flattery, and get strong connection really quickly to gain your trust, to make you think, this is who I am. Look at what we have. Look at how amazing, it's like this fantasy, this fairy tale, right? And this phase of the whole process is usually like big grand gestures and, going out of your way to make promises and create a sense of deep connection. And what that does is it creates dependence. I can rely on this. It's a false sense of dependence, but it's like, I can rely on this person. This person's trustworthy. This person is just amazing. Look at,
if this is how they find people who need exactly that.
Right. And they find people, usually people pleasers, because the people pleaser is a narcissist. Because why? They're narcissistic in a different way. They are passive because they have damages that make them feel like they can't speak up for themselves, that they can't take care of themselves in a way that would be okay, because they're not the no sayers. They're the yes sayers. They're not saying, I'm going to take care of myself and it's okay to say no because I feel guilty if I, like, so I'll get into that.
And
but
they find their self-worth and what they contribute to other people.
Exactly. And that's how they get their validation, because that's how they were taught. If you do, so likely a people pleaser comes out of a family where they were tethered, like their family somewhere, or their environment was tethered in some way, because they were taught that if you do for me, I will love you more. If you don't, right? Simply speaking, right? Okay. So then after we get through the love bombing and the idealization and the woo and the big shiny things, right? We go into the trauma bonding. Now, another colloquial term that gets a lot of like press, so to speak, when people talk about it. That's big now. You're going to hear that a lot. I hear it so much more. I'm like, oh my God.
Trauma bonding?
Because people, do you hear it a lot? I hear it all the time now, because people are using it.
I will now, because of selective attention.
Right, exactly. But it's because like you'll hear it now in movies a little bit more. You'll hear it in TV shows a little bit more. It's interesting. So, but it's always been, not always, but it's been around for a while. I'm familiar with it. I don't use it a lot, but in an effort to like explain this whole tethering thing, the trauma bond is after this whole love bombing initial like honeymoon phase, right? Of like life, right? Whatever that is, 3-6 years, whatever. A narcissist will start to sort of selectively devalue you. Right. Everyone's a little different. So they'll devalue you. They'll engage in more maneuvering behaviors like, gaslighting. I didn't say that. You heard it wrong. I was only joking. Like, little things like that. And it starts to creep in and it becomes more emotionally maneuvering and more emotionally maneuvering. And intermittently, I love this terminology. I call it this, and then I realized, oh my God, it's out in the world like this. So I don't know if I must have heard it and then put it in my practice years ago, but intermittently while they're doing that, what they do is they go back to like the love bombing, but it's not love bombing, it's breadcrumbing.
Yeah.
So they'll intermittently be like gaslighting, or they'll do a tactic that's like that whole like devaluing of the person, because that holds you to the tether. because you know that there's going to be a breadcrumb coming there.
Right.
I'm eventually going to get this like little bit of positive reinforcement and a little bit of affection, and then
I make this adjustment.
Yep. And then,
Yep.
so what it does is it creates a cycle of hope and despair.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, I'm hopeful. Maybe today that they'll love me more. Today that they'll do that nice thing for me. And then today was despairing because it didn't happen. But I know it's coming. It's like
Yep.
when I talk to my clients about it, I'll say it's like gambling. If you've ever been to a casino, right? Yep. You play the slot machine. Why? Because you know eventually it's going to pay off. Every time it doesn't happen, okay. But when it pays off even $10 and you put in 20, you still will keep playing. Why? Because you're being breadcrumbed, right? If you sit for an hour and you get nothing, some people are just more likely to go, I'm out, right? So, but
Yep.
right, but
And some people are it's due.
Some people are like, it will eventually come, because we know eventually there is a break in that cycle, that there will be hope, and then the despair, and then there'll be a break, and it will be brief because it's a breadcrumb and you'll get it and then it'll be over. And what happens with that is it traps the tethered person, the person who's being built into being tethered. It traps them into the relationship, and it creates a bond, making it difficult for that person to detach from the narcissist, because it's like, but they have, I had a client tell me yesterday, 80% he said 80% of the time that we're together, it's great, but that other 20%, it's terrible. And I'm like, yeah, but the 20% is awful. And we've been working on codependency, and this is part of, he's tethered. Yep. He's tethered, and it's interesting because he was not tethered in his family, but he's definitely tethered into this relationship. And so we're working on that, but that's part of that. So we've got the love bombing with the idolization, and then we've got the building of the trauma bond that I just explained with the breadcrumbing, right? So maneuvering the person, devaluing them, and then breadcrumbing them. And then we go into how to talk about narcissistic supply. Narcissists rely solely on others for their validation, their admiration, their acceptance, their acknowledgement, and all that feeding. It's like if you could think of the tether as like a straw.
Yeah.
Right? They feed off of you. They feed off of you as the tethered one to fill their cup up. They're constantly filling their cup up, and the tether keeps you close, right? So they keep you close, ensuring like that you'll be a steady stream of supply, even if it comes at that person's expense.
Right. So
if you're a parent, I see this quite a bit. If you're a parent who's got adult children, right? I have to take some water. Hold on. If you're a parent who's raised children in a narcissistic home, even though you might not be the narcissist, and they've never had expectations on them for the most part, like other than do well in school or whatever, and they're still being paid for, and they just, they use your credit card, and and you got them lined up, and they're 25 years old and 30 years old and whatever, and right. Yep. Well, you as the person who's tethered into your kids like that, or into your spouse or your ex-spouse or your girlfriend or whoever it is, you're getting sucked into supplying that chain without even realizing it, because so many people just blindly do it because it's so much of because by the time it gets to you're the supplier, you are so far into that tether that you have no idea that you're in it, and you go into denial because it's so trauma bonded in that if you leave, or if you make any kind of change to it, or you rock that boat or whatever, it's so painful emotionally because it's been trained into all the people in that family system or in that couple system that you can't leave.
Right.
Or you can't shake it up, because if you do, it's painful.
And this person becomes so important in your life that it's especially traumatic when you get negative reaction from them.
Especially when it's your kids. Yeah. Right. And you have adult kids that do this. Right. So, and so then we go, so now we have the supply, and now we get into like the full maneuver. In theory, they'll call it manipulation. This stuff is a coping strategy. So the narcissist is using all of these things as their coping strategy to get what they need. But I call it maneuvering. They're maneuvering, still a coping strategy, but people call it manipulation. So we'll call it for what they call it, manipulation and control. This is what comes next. The manipulation and control comes where the person will use multiple different tactics, like guilt tripping, which we all know what that is, right?
Yep.
Trying to make you feel that you've done something wrong. You're going to do something wrong. You might be perceived as doing something wrong, and God forbid, and so, that future faking. They plan out things in the future to hold you close as if like, well, we have a concert to go to. We have a trip to take. It's like a year from now. So you're still roped in because you feel like, well, I have that trip, so I can't leave. Like, so you get roped, literally tethered in. You cannot move, right? And then also another control tactic is the triangulation. I think I've talked about that in previous shows. You get triangulated in with other people, like that. That you're stuck between you and another person that gets roped in with you because they're tethered in with you. So it could be another friend of yours. It could be your other child with you. It could be whatever is tethered in with you to that person. And then what happens is it's all in an effort to control a person from being independent. It controls that person. So if you, Lou, are the victim of being tethered, it controls you from leaving me. I will never let you leave because I will continue to breadcrumb you. I'll continue to trauma bond you. I'll continue to love bomb you. I'll make sure I devalue you enough, just in a balance. And it's like this perfect little thing that happens. And some people obviously realize it, but many don't. And then by the time it's in there, I've got you so twisted into it. It's like, wait a second. Because everyone's now in the role.
Right.
And no one really knows that it's anything different because this is what the norm is. So oftentimes the other piece of control is oftentimes people will use fear, obligation, and guilt together. We call that fog.
I like it.
So you put it and you get put into a fog: fear, obligation, and guilt. Right. So the control tactic is, that's if you don't do this, and you're my dad, or you're my mom, or whatever, I'm going to, or you're my child, right? Because it can be, right? If you don't do this, I'm not going to do this for you anymore. I'm not going to give you love anymore. And I'm going to make you feel terrible about yourself. So they fog you to death, right? They put up, right? It can feel suffocating, right? And what it does is it manipulates the emotional center of the brain to keep you tethered to the relationship, because the fear of leaving or the fear of setting a boundary becomes greater than the abuse you're under.
Right.
So it's easier just to keep giving money, keep doing all these things, keep whatever it is up because you're tethered in, right? And so, and then the last piece of building this is the intermittent reinforcement.
Yep.
Right? You know that. So it's the inconsistent pattern of positive and negative reinforcement that keeps you hooked. So it's similar to what I said before, but this is actually a stage and phase of it, as that really is the quintessential holder to the glue of this is that it's the person's hooked in, and they cling to the hope that the good times will return.
Yeah.
Even when the abuse is ongoing. It's like people who apologize while they're still abusing you. I'm sorry while they're still yelling at you.
Yeah.
I'm whatever it is, they're doing, like, wait a second. And eventually, you have, well, not eventually, a lot of people know that that's happening and go, wait a second, but it's still hard because because by the time you get into the intermittent reinforcement part of this, you're already tethered in so hard. Right. It's so hard to get out. And so this goes to, like, sometimes.
And often you don't see it as anything abusive. You see it as, this is the role.
Right.
Mm-hmm. This is the dynamic of the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times people don't know any different. So they don't think that there's anything else different out there. So they don't have the reasoning to go behind them and go, wait a second, this isn't healthy.
And if you're that type of person that a narcissist draws, chances are you draw a narcissist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you probably had a string of them.
Right. Well, and that's why and then you came from.
Yeah.
Right. That's why it's like it's a pass through, right? Because you're not, it doesn't exist in the vacuum.
Right.
It's a pass through like that, right? So, okay. So you've got the stages of like how you kind of be, this is the quick and dirty version of this, right? Obviously, I just want people to understand it. But breaking the tether, that's the thing. First of all, you have to know you're in it.
Yeah.
This is the biggest problem, right? Is like you have to recognize that you are tethered. And it's so hard because because there's guilt and shame in the narcissistic way of the tethered person that
Right.
feels like, I don't want to admit that I'm tethered because that makes me look blah, blah, blah,
Right.
whatever, fill in the blank. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't make you look anything. Just recognize you're tethered, see it for what it is, and get the hell out. Okay. Easier said than done. But okay. So awareness, is cliche as that is, but if you're not aware and people are aware, it's being able to acknowledge and recognize truly
Right.
that you are, in a controlled environment where you know that you're being maneuvered. And in what ways are you being maneuvered? Are you being gaslit? Are you being guilt tripped all the time? Are you being negated in what you think and feel? Are you being silent treatmented? Are you, whatever it is, are you being withdrawn from? Are you being contempted from? Are you, whatever those things,
Yep.
in relationships, they talk about the 4 horsemen of divorce, right?
Yeah.
And like those things, they can be part of that narcissistic tethering because it's a way of controlling a situation where people won't leave, but you get a partner that is, withdrawn and contemptuous and coercive, like all the things, and it shuts you out, but you'll stay because you hope for the breadcrumbing.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So hopefully once you recognize, even though you're reticent at doing, or hesitant to do so, the first thing I always teach people is you have to set boundaries. And you know what's going to happen when you do that? It's not going to feel good.
No.
Because, you know why? Because narcissists, I always get this visual image. You know how I am visual. I always get this visual image of when you set a boundary on a narcissist, the devil horns come up, right?
Yeah.
So if you're watching me today, I just went with my
Yep.
fingers, right? Because narcissists don't like that.
No.
Narcissists hate boundaries. And it's not about a boundary necessarily on them. It's a boundary that you do for yourself.
Right.
It's about, I'm going to not let this happen. So you'll hear, and I've said this before, you'll hear people say, why does this happen to me? Why does he always like that? Why is she always like that? Or why did they stop contacting me? Why don't they love me anymore? And that's the victim. That's the
Yep.
tethered person saying that. No. We say, why do I allow it?
Yeah.
I'm not allowing this to happen. I'm going to live my life. They can still do that. They can still talk to me like that. They can still treat me like that. But I'm still going to do my thing, and I'm not going to tether in.
Own your part in this.
Yeah, I'm going to stop my part in this.
Yep.
There's a boundary. That's a boundary. Establishing that and being consistent will help you regain a sense of control for yourself. So if you're in a marriage or in a relationship or in a friendship that has those pieces to it, and you can establish a boundary of I'm just going to still do my life, and I'm going to do the year of me, and I'm going to do the year of, or the day of me, or the month of me, or whatever. And or with your kids, right? And they stop calling you, they stop talking to you for a variety of reasons or something because, you didn't do what they wanted or whatever. Okay.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, that's part of breaking that cycle. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt,
Right.
but what it means is you have to be able to set a clear boundary for yourself so that you can break yourself out of that loop. They will find their other supplier, whether it's they were coming to you for money, support, advice, whatever it was, they will find another supplier. The thing I consistently see is a tethered person has become so habituated to that role. It's like a great loss for them because they now don't feel like they're needed and wanted and relevant, because if a narcissist can easily walk away.
Yep.
They just drop off. And
if that's why you're drawing your self-worth.
And right. And so if the person who's the victim of this, right, or the survivor of this, usually there's massive fallout for that person, because it's like it's an identity
Yep.
death, because they rip the seed of your soul from you and be like, if you aren't going to comply with how we think, how we feel, how we want it to be, we're done until you tether back in, essentially, right? And maybe they'll breadcrumb you, maybe they won't, but likely is they just move on to the next supplier, right? Because that's another manipulation tactic, and you have to know how to set your own boundary. And I think the boundary setting is one of the hard. Sometimes I can't get past boundary setting for people. We just work on boundary setting for like a year.
Yep.
Or more. Sometimes I have a client that we did it for 3 years, and she actually reconnected with her family after we did this, because it reshaped the family because of her role, and it changed everything for her. And I thought for sure she was going to be a no contact for life person. And and the whole point was to reunify them. And they didn't know this, but she needed to get out of the narcissistic cycle, to be tethered, to be able to go, okay, and she set clear boundaries, and it was super hard. And now it reconfigured the whole relationship, but it took many, many years.
Yep.
Right. And I'm thrilled, because that's an unusual outcome to have that happen.
It is a death of self, because that's who you become, especially with an important relationship.
Exactly. And
you have to understand again that you have worth outside of being a supply.
Well, and it's hard to believe too. It's, I think, yes. And you have to feel that, and you have to know that family members, we're talking family specifically, but friends do this too. But family members, just because they're family doesn't mean they won't screw you over.
Yep.
Just because they're your kids or your wife, your husband, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your ex, that doesn't mean, if they're tethered, they will sacrifice you on the stake.
Yep.
You are not, and people are floored by like, I can't believe, why would they do that? Like, no, you don't do, why would they do that to me? You say, why am I allowing it to happen to me? Because they're sacrificing me on the stake. Like, I'm not going to allow that. I have to, but that's hard. And so again, way easier said than done. I mean, it takes therapy. And so that's the next thing of breaking the cycle is you can't do this usually alone. I have people that have read, I would say, hundreds of books. And that's great. But, most of the self-help books, which is why people ask me to write a book that's about how to, not what it is, right? So here we're talking about how it is and how to break it today. You can't get it in a self-help book, but self-help books are good for like understanding and recognizing, acknowledgement, right?
It helps awareness.
But then it's like, okay, how do you then go further? That's when you need therapy, support groups, connecting with a trusted friend or someone that is just a good listener, like a life coach, maybe a relationship coach, a family coach, or group, like somewhere where you can feel like you can break free and just say what you need to about that.
An independent space.
Right. I think one of the hardest things I've seen in people, it's so much like addiction, is that when you confront the person with who's the tethered one, like in therapy, when I have had to confront the issue, not confront the person, but confront the issue with them of where they're at in the cycle of this, there's often a kickback of, no, I'm not. I don't understand. That can't possibly be. I've lost everything. You don't understand. It's like, you haven't lost everything. You are your independent person. You've been so connected into this incredibly love bomb, trauma bonded tether that's super unhealthy for you. Just getting to understand that, to have them see it, often is just the biggest part of that before we can even get to boundaries, because people get so discouraged that their role of being the giver, I always call it, you're being a giver, and how many givers in the world are there? Not as many as there are takers. And so and obviously the narcissistic people fall, the severe ones will fall into the taker role. What are you giving? You're always expecting. And so the person who's the giver, the yes person, the yes man, the yes woman, the never say no person, the go along to get along, all that, you are a prime target for getting tethered. You are, as an adult, especially if you grew up under that kind of circumstance and you're already a passive person, or you're more submissive, or you go along to get along, you're going to be in that. And then it's going to be this massive shock to you and your brain and your emotional center to get that hit of, wait a second. What do you mean you're not going to contact me? What do you mean what do you mean we've gone cold turkey? Because I said, I don't like the way you talk to me, or I don't want that in my life anymore. Can you not say those things to me? Can you not do that? Can you be more respectful? Oh, you can't say that to a narcissist, because what does that do? That shakes them up so much that in their minds, it's how dare you not comply, right? Now, it's not conscious usually, but sometimes it is.
The way I normally put that is that's peeking behind the curtain.
Yes.
It's the worst thing you can do to a narcissist.
Yes. Well, yep.
You don't want to see backstage.
Right. Because another visual, it's just like in The Wizard of Oz or in Wicked. You peek behind the curtain, it's not this big, powerful thing, right? Which a narcissist wants you to believe that they have power and they can create this fear. It's a little teeny person because they feel small.
Yep.
People get
That's why they're so desperate for you not to see behind the curtain.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what do? They cut you off.
Yep.
They cut you off so they can't be seen, so that they can't have those boundaries put on them, so they can't have the curtain pulled back. I mean, there's so many pieces to that, right? Yep. That's a whole nother section of like just talking about like what's going on for the narcissist, right? Mm-hmm. But when you are in that situation and you get to a point where, okay, you sought support and then you've set your boundaries and all those things, you may be in a situation where you've gone no contact. Like I was talking about the client that went no contact with her family, right? I have several of those going on right now where people are out of contact with their family. That's not unusual, right?
Yep.
That happens in the world all the time, every day. They're not always in therapy, but the going no contact thing for some people is very, very difficult, because that's where the downside is. It's a death of self for some people because it's been your identity. If you've been in a relationship with people or a person, it's hard when you're in multiple relationships, like if it's a family, right?
Yep.
And they all sort of cut you off because you stopped supplying them, right? And they blame you, or they blame you moved somewhere new, or you changed your job, or you got remarried, or whatever. They blame it on something else. And they basically say, if you don't comply in and make it the way it was when we liked you, when you were doing all these things,
yep.
well, then we're going to make you suffer. And my tethered people will always say to me, like, why would they do that to me? And I always say, because you allow it.
Yep.
You're allowing it to happen. And I know that people go, that's so cold, but it's not cold. You have a choice. You have to see it so you don't allow it to happen. You can be in contact with someone and still not allow it to happen. If they don't want to be in contact with you because you're not a complier and you're not just submitting, that's not on you. That's going to be on them. And that may be painful for you. But so if we go to the whole process of how it is to untether, and you're unraveling the tether, you're going to end up being in this very grief spot. And it's just like death. It can take if you're in no contact, I can speak to like the client that I had.
So this death, it's death of self.
It's death of self, of your identity, of who you were in those people's lives, because you thought you were relevant and important, and you were, because you were a supplier.
Yep.
And that doesn't mean you're less than, but when you're tossed aside so easily, you have to know it's not because it's a you thing, even though it feels like it's a you thing. It's a them thing.
Yep.
They are the problem, not you. I mean, you are a problem, but in a different way,
right?
Because you were enabling the system.
Yep.
That's where the enabling came in that I talked about at the beginning. So, and if you can't relate to this out in the world, I'd be surprised, because most people, this is not an uncommon thing. You just
have
might not
one of these relationships in your life.
You have at least one, or you've had one, or it's going on. Like, there's no way to escape this, because there's that out there. The other thing quickly about the definition of narcissism, people always think it's like people think they're better than. People will present as powerful and over the top, and they always have these one-up stories, and they always have this like demonstrative kind of like about them.
Because that's the show.
Because if we look behind the curtain, it comes from being really, really small, because they're so injured at the seat of their soul. Hurt people want to hurt you to get you to hurt with them. And if you're not already hurt, they're going to make sure you do hurt by devaluing, by doing all these things to get you in, to bond you in, so that then you stay. Because then the likelihood is you have been the likelihood is they have been abandoned and rejected and detached in some way in the past. So now they're creating an environment where you get no way to leave. You get sucked in.
Yep.
You can't leave, but you can. And if you can't, and if you don't want to leave because you have kids or because of other things, you can still stay, but put your boundaries around you and do your life. Right? I mean, there's people that do that. There's people that make sure they have their boundaries and set their boundaries for themselves, maybe on the other person too. But
that can be a rough ride, but you have to understand the value of it.
Because sometimes things are, financial. Sometimes things are like business related. Like there's a lot of factors. It's not simple. It's not a simple untether, but you can emotionally untether yourself to a greater extent if you have the awareness that this is happening. And I think that is a huge key for people to be able to do that. So Lou, given all I've said today so far, what do you think?
The whole narcissist thing, what makes it so difficult to deal with is that there are narcissists, there are, clinical narcissists, but we all have a degree of it. We're all dealing with it to a degree to some extent.
Yes.
Anyway, it's just a matter of how large a degree it is and how palatable it is for you.
Right.
But again, I think the important part is understanding your role, who you are, why you're attracting narcissists.
Right.
Because that awareness helps you avoid that situation, helps you handle that situation.
Right. And I find most commonly in that is for people is that they don't say no enough.
White knights.
Yep. And they think it's good. And they have that pie in the sky, hopeaholic thing.
Yep.
But the hope, despair, like it will be fine. It will get better. It's just, that's who she is. That's who he is. No. Yes, that is who they are.
Yeah.
But you don't have to be that way because it's the year of you, damn it. It's the day of you. It's the month of you. It's August 6th. What are you doing today to make sure you separate and untether yourself if you're tethered? Doesn't mean you walk away. You just be you, kind, loving, caring, and you don't take shit.
Yep.
You don't have to take shit from someone to make them feel good. Nope.
It's hard though.
It is. Yeah. Well,
especially when again your self-worth is connected to being the supplier.
Well, and that's the thing. And there's another piece of the acknowledgement piece of understanding that you are gaining your self-worth as being a supplier because you're intermittently getting reinforced that good boy, good girl, you're doing good, right? So that feels good in that moment. But then the other moments are like, what the hell?
You're still living off the initial love bombing. You're still living off the honeymoon period of the relationship.
Right. And you're living off of that whole, like, how could this person do this to me?
Right.
How could these people do this to me? What do you mean? Like, well, because when people are grown up entitled and called into being like damaged and not having expectations and giving way too much permission and indulgence, honestly, much of the time they don't give a shit about you.
But before that awareness,
quite blankly.
Yeah, what normally happens before that awareness is this person who knows me so well thinks I'm worthless. So I must be worthless.
That's the interpretation.
Right.
And usually a narcissist doesn't think that the person's worthless because they find a lot of worth in them, but they will use tactics to make a person feel that they think they're worthless. Follow that one.
Yeah.
And that, right, because...
But at the point where they've dropped contact or whatever, it's like, well, how can they do that to me? I must be really bad.
Because the interpretation of the tethered one is that I am a bad person. I must have done something wrong.
And then, what I'm doing isn't enough.
And what I'm doing is wrong. It's not enough. I'm less than. They don't love me. They don't like me. No. You don't need other people to have you feel loved or liked. I always say there's plenty of other people in the world that will love you for who you are.
Yep.
Without you having to be soul sucked. You don't have to be soul sucked. And you also don't have to be a soul sucker. On the other side of that, as a narcissist, if you've been listening today and you can identify as a narcissist, stop soul sucking people. There's a whole nother show. Maybe that's the show for next week. Don't be a soul sucker.
They have their own hurdles that they deal with.
And that's a whole, right. So I could do a whole show on that. And probably should, right?
Yep.
Right. But so I thought it was timely for today.
But it keeps coming around to, I'm sorry. It keeps coming around to self-worth, doesn't it?
Yes.
Keep finding your self-worth rather internally as opposed to externally.
Yeah. And that's the thing is a person who's tethered heavily and doesn't see it and doesn't want to see it usually thrives themselves on getting externally validated,
Right.
because it's the pat on the head. It's like, right. But then there's people that get fully aware and stay in these things or stay whatever, but then they seek their own, they work on themselves and then get their own self-validation from other things. And that's how people end up staying. People are like, how does that person stay in that? Because they do their life. They sit in their own life and do their life despite that. And they
understanding that's not selfish.
Right. And they they deflect it away. They detach it away from themselves of, yep, it's there, but I'm not letting it land on me.
Right.
I'm not doing that, and people say, why would someone choose to do that? I'm like, well, there's a lot, again, kids, finances, property, businesses, like there's all kinds of reasons, right? Sometimes it's still that there's still a little tether there, right? Or there's still that hopeaholic in them, but it can get better over time. And the more you work on that and the year of you, the better that gets. So, but I thought that was good for August. What I was going to say, that you keep interrupting me, is I was going to say that August, I think I said it last week, August is like this, like sort of, especially up here in the Northeast, it's like, oh, we're getting to, September 22nd, we're going to be at the end of summer. So people up here start ramping up for, I don't know what it is in the South, but up because they're all going back to school already. But it's like this mindset of like, okay, we're going into this like fall. We're not fall yet because we still have another month, but we're going into this like change of seasons. And it's like, well, how do you change yourself? Here we are in August. How do you change yourself? How do you move on? Identify, maybe today and over the next week, identify, who are you tethered to? Do you know if you're tethered? How are you tethered? How do you do it? What's your role in that?
Most people nowadays can name about 20 narcissists in their lives.
Oh yeah.
Because it's so prominent.
Because it's that's what I said at the top of the show. It's like, it's so present. And keeping in mind and being kind and loving and psychology based is that narcissists use all of this because it's a coping strategy for them feeling less than.
Right.
It's not about them feeling amazing. They don't feel good, which is, I said in class, I think a week or two ago, someone said, do you like working with people who are narcissistic? I said, do I like it? I wouldn't necessarily say like it, but I know it. I know it so well, as I wink at you. I know it so well that it's just easier. It's easier for me because it doesn't land on me, but I can spot it a mile away and it just passes right by me. Like I can sit in a room with it and just be like,
They're interesting because most people are looking for a safe place where they're accepted.
Yeah.
And the people who find out who they are and accept them anyway are the ones that they get rid of. Because they don't want people to know who they are.
Exactly. Because when you see through, they don't want you around anymore. And that's why narcissistic people don't have like a ton of friends. They have hard times with relationships, is because after a certain period of time, could be 1 or 2 times, it could be 10 times.
Everybody sees behind the curtain eventually.
Everybody sees behind the curtain.
That's why they constantly have to groom supply and keep it rotating.
You are spot on, my friend. Lou the Pooh.
I've known some narcissists.
Well, if you haven't, if you haven't in life, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, hopefully this was wonderfully helpful for you all to start your August with, and we will keep doing the year and month of you as we go through 2025. You guys have a fantastic week, and I will see you next week.